guys, I'm Linda.
And I'm Vicky.
And we are Partners in Crime.
Plus two.
Okay, today we are going to dive into the Netflix series
Confession Killer
about Henry Lee Lucas with our guests Keith and Marjorie. So we have them here today. So we're going to go over those cases because there were hundreds of them that they discussed in the documentary. So who wants to start us off?
Keith?
Oh, he's picking on me. Well, the thing that I guess was most riveting to me is the connection with law enforcement and how law enforcement was just, totally convinced of this guy. He was giving them what they wanted, and they just went along with it. And how psychologically, they were both playing on each other.
Right.
Henry Lee Lucas and Sheriff Jim Botwell were both kind of playing on each other, both gaining notoriety during the whole thing.
Because of this. And Botwell was actually the Texas Rangers. Was he the... So we're dealing with this case, or the series focuses on Texas. And Botwell is the head of the Texas Rangers. In what area? Waco?
Well, he wasn't the head of the Texas Rangers. There's another guy. There's another man that was the head. And the guy that was the head of the Texas Rangers was the one that was connected with the Vic Feisel Attorney General framing thing.
Okay, so we'll dive...
He's just a Texas Ranger.
Figure out where all these people fit in. So when the story starts, when we're starting to watch this documentary, we're talking about he's being interviewed. How does this start?
Yeah, don't they have, well, first of all, there's that journalist too that's involved. There's a journalist that was brought in by Botwell because they were, I guess, cozy. And then he brings in this team from Japan, these two Japanese dudes.
I know.
And they're like making like a documentary.
Yeah, they were so fascinated.
Yeah.
But Botwell was pretty famous for his work on Bundy.
No, you know what he's famous for? The University of Texas sniper.
Oh, that's right. That's
the University of Texas sniper Charles Whitman in 1966.
He stood on the bell tower, shot all the students.
Shot like 31 people. Botwell, at that time, wasn't a Texas Ranger. He was and he had a lot of interest in flying. He was a pilot. And what's interesting is that the story kind of got spun that he was flying around taking shots from the sniper, and he was shooting them, but he actually wasn't. There was actually another officer. He wasn't even an officer. He was just a pilot they hired. They were flying around. They were out away. They were enough. They were far away. They did take on bullets, but this was actually a thing that got Botwell become like this legendary figure that now all of a sudden he's got to kind of keep living up to, and that's how Henry Lucas actually helped him to continue to become this legendary Texas.
Somebody was involved with Bundy, so maybe it was the journalist. And
yes, the journalist in this story, the main journalist that is talking when we have the Japanese journalist there as well. There is a journalist there that had done stories. He did a lot of stories on serial killers.
Right, but I thought that's how he got connected with Botwell, this journalist, because they were buddy-buddy.
Okay.
And I thought it was over his reporting on Bundy, but...
Well, you know what was another interesting connection? Ted Bundy was, we're just talking about Adam Walsh before the show. Adam Walsh that got murdered. Well, Ted Bundy was a suspect, a possible suspect in that case.
Really? And this is John Walsh's son from
Wow.
America's
Yeah.
Most Wanted, John Walsh. Adam Walsh was his child who got abducted and murdered.
Yeah.
Which, to tie it into this thing, Henry Lee Lucas's partner in crime, that's, pardon the pun,
No, that's
his
okay.
partner in crime, Otis Toole, and lover, gay lover,
Yeah, yeah.
Toole admitted to the crime of Adam Walsh.
Oh, wow.
So as Toole and Henry Lee Lucas are admitting to every crime that comes in front of them, pretty much, getting flown all, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was one of them.
So
And that's how it's all weirdly connected to Ted Bundy, and then this Texas Ranger, and all
Right.
these weird connections. Which
Right.
that's what makes the thing so amazing. This
It is very
video.
riveting, and it does. You can't stop watching it because you want to see how they figure out all of these crimes, and that Henry Lee Lucas probably was not someone that committed these crimes. There are aspects of this documentary where he supposedly committed a crime, and then 2,000 miles away the next day or two he commits another crime. So he's basically, what it boils down to is a lot of these crimes he's just driving around the country murdering people for the most part. The way that they
Right.
present these cases and the timeline. So when this starts off, basically what it is Henry Lee Lucas is with this Sheriff Botwell, and he commits to a specific crime, and then he says that he did these other crimes. So Botwell's bringing in all these people, all of these police from around the country, saying that Henry Lee Lucas probably did commit the crimes, so they have their cases that they can solve, basically, right?
Yeah,
so
they
that's
start this
pretty
task,
much.
what they call task force,
Right.
and they bring in people from all over the country for these unsolved crimes. And Henry Lee Lucas is just and at that time, having a confession. This is before DNA evidence, so
Right.
the confession is very is taken as a lot of weight he's confessed to it, so it must be true. Who would confess to a crime
Right.
they didn't do?
Right.
That's how it's perceived.
Well, Jim Botwell and Henry Lee Lucas became close.
They were like friends, it seemed.
Yeah.
They
The
were
way
like,
it is described.
and it was kind of portrayed that Henry Lee Lucas was so enamored with Botwell that he would have done anything for him.
Right.
And you kind of question Botwell's motives. You think, is he doing this for himself to be more well respected than he already is, or does he really think that Henry Lee Lucas
Committed all these
committed?
crimes.
They were saying hundreds of crimes. So I had my doubts about Botwell.
Well, and then there's the other Texas Ranger who they were partners.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and that guy's still alive, and they were interviewing him in this documentary.
Yeah.
And that guy still couldn't admit, hey, we messed up, or
Yeah.
we got let. He still wasn't. He still couldn't do it.
No,
right?
yeah.
He was like still holding the line
Yeah,
of
yeah.
we did everything right. We did everything we were supposed to do.
Right.
And the other thing is, these guys are getting these crimes solved in these families that,
desperate.
I guess they get some kind of closure when so then you become heroic to them when you
Yeah.
can close it and we found the guy. We found him, we got him, he's going to be on death row or whatever the heck it is.
Right.
And strangely enough, it was actually in the case where he murdered his mother and his girlfriend that's the one where he gets found guilty in it, and he just stands up and says, well, what about all the other people
What
that
about the
murdered?
other 100 people?
Yeah.
And the judge was like,
Right.
what?
Right.
And the odd thing was also like the milkshakes that they're giving him
yeah.
milkshakes for confessing to these crimes. So you're kind of
Right.
like, okay, well,
What do you want? That's what he
They treated
wanted.
him very well in this jail.
Yes.
I guess it was a county jail. It couldn't have been prison because they wouldn't be treat him that well there.
Yeah.
But
And they flew him all over the country, and he was
right,
a celebrity.
to say that he committed these crimes. So basically, these people were feeding him, from what we took from the documentary, these law enforcement officials are kind of feeding him information for him to be able to say, yes, I did this. The person was here. They were wearing this. So what was one of the big stories was the orange socks girl.
That was the capital murder
That he got death sentence.
that he got the death sentence for.
Yes.
And he goes to the site and he describes all these things, which makes you believe, all right, well, you know. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you don't really get to see everything that he was fed.
Yes.
I mean, the guy had a good memory,
They said
or
he had,
he's a great storyteller.
yeah.
They said he had a fantastic memory for detail.
Right. But he did have brain damage.
Yeah.
So there was they said he was beaten by his mother when he was young, and that was one of the people that he did confess that he actually did kill. So basically, he confessed that he killed over 200 people, right?
And went up to like 300 something.
Well,
Right.
the number kept
50.
growing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they can only pin his mother and his girlfriend as definite murders. And I believe someone that he lived with, a woman that he lived with.
There was a guy that did it. I don't know if it was Tool. Somebody burned somebody in the house. I don't know if it was Tool or him, but. Mm-hmm. And the other interesting piece, though, is that what they talked about in the documentary is that these serial killers usually will have a pattern. They'll do the same thing, and or they'll target young women or particular
They looked
age
a
group.
certain way. Yes.
Yeah. They ran the gamut.
Yes.
Races, ages, sex, all, and that
Murder
was
weapons.
murder weapons.
They were killed
right.
all different ways.
All different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it was very. I mean, God forbid if you had to actually be there trying to follow all of this when it was going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Because thank God they put it in a package that we could understand, but I couldn't even imagine being there talking to this person.
Yeah.
There was also a nun. I believe she was a nun, right? A sister.
Oh, that took care of him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yes, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He had he found God with her.
Yes. She
Right.
was
They were doing
very
Bible studies and
caring.
stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it's like that guy, Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know. He didn't have any particular confirmed identity for himself. He would just become whatever you wanted him to be.
Right.
And he would
Yeah.
say,
Right.
I'm sorry,
Right.
I got off track with the brain damage. They did say that he will want to
Please.
please you, so he'll become what you want him to become or say what you want him to say.
Right.
As far as killing people.
Yeah,
and that
because
sort of
when he
thing.
when he was with the Rangers, he would say what they wanted him to say. But then when they pulled away from the Rangers,
Yes.
then he flipped on the Rangers and flipped
said,
his story.
"I didn't do it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I thought was a telltale, and I was like, the Japanese guys were talking about some murder, and he claimed he committed that.
He said
Yeah.
he drove to it.
This is true.
He said he drove to
But
it.
why wouldn't?
Yes. So
That was the commitment
in the
of those
documentary.
Rangers.
Yeah.
And I forget the other guys. I think it was Prince. He was the one that actually was still alive.
Yeah.
That they were talking to, interviewing him in this documentary. They were so committed to this project and to solving these murders with this guy that wouldn't have thrown you off.
That's why I question
when
their
you said-
motives. That's
Yeah.
why I question
Of
Botwell's
course.
motives, and
Well, his IQ they said was only 86. So even though he remembered a lot, his IQ was very low. And yes, he did say he committed a murder in Japan and he drove there.
how'd you get there?
He had so maybe they either
wasn't
gave him the
really-
benefit of the doubt, or this guy, he was kind of smart, like a reptile. I mean, he had a reptilian intelligence that he could, I guess, make people believe. And then, I mean, to tie it into your guys where you did a show on the women that fall in love with these murderers.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was somebody in there that claimed that they were Becky Powell, the murdered woman.
Oh my God, yes.
So let's say who Becky Powell was. Becky Powell was his girlfriend that
He killed.
So there was this woman that winds up in the later episodes said that she was Becky Powell and he never killed her.
That was a shocker when she came on and she said, I am Becky Powell. It's like, what?
And then,
But what was happening was she fell in love with him in jail. They were talking back and forth and he was feeding her in turn all of this information so she could tell the media how he grew up or what the house looked like and all that kind of thing.
She knew details that
he
were...
basically did the same thing that they did to him as far as law enforcement, feeding him information. So it was very interesting.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, I know in one of the cases, or maybe, I know that Toole and Lucas, they thought that they could get in prison together. And that's why he admitted to the one crime that he thought he was going to get locked up in Florida with Toole so they could, because they were buddies and whatnot and hang out together. But how about there was that one woman that was also, I don't know if she was a prosecutor or she made up, that she's the one that actually fed law enforcement fake information to see if Lucas, they knew the whole thing was fake, they fed it through, and they had problems with it, was ethical, because they would be fooling the professionals involved.
She was law enforcement.
She was, yes.
But I don't know if she was whatever she was, but I think she was like a district attorney for some jurisdiction that he was.
Yeah.
And so
they, a whole story.
They went through there and sure enough, he took the bait and admitted to it.
Yeah.
And then they knew, or they're like, okay, we just made that whole thing up. It's fake.
Right.
But it's amazing how the whole thing went on. And
we were saying before we started the episode here that what a horrible life he had as a child growing up.
Oh, yes.
His mother was a prostitute. She would bring men in while he was there and he would see what she was doing.
Right.
And his father was...
Well, both these men, Toole and Lucas, both their parents were alcoholics, drug addicts, involved in all kinds of stuff, beat their kids.
Right.
And, with that definitely...
messed with his head, for sure.
Well, and also for your own self, it's like you realize how important and how that parenting is, and how influential it creates a person, it creates a monster, it creates
Right. And we even talked about it in another video, I can't remember which one, how we were talking about whether people are born evil or whether they're
made.
And this certainly is something that says they're made. They were not born evil. Because of
circumstances.
They were just terrible. I almost felt sorry for him because
he becomes a sympathetic figure and a reviled villain too at the same time.
Yes. Right.
Because
you're not sympathetic to him until you know. Well, you are when you find out his childhood, but when you find out later as an adult what he's done, I didn't have. Before I knew what they were doing, I didn't have sympathy for him at that point. I thought, he's
scumbag.
He's horrible. He's a murderer that kills people for no reason.
And the way that it was presented, you would think, oh my gosh, he's just driving around the country killing people for no reason at all.
Right.
He doesn't know them. The journalist that was in this his name is Hugh Ainsworth.
Yes.
So he was probably the one that also talked to Ted Bundy and and those type of people. So he was the journalist that was there that kind of pieced together all of these crimes that he said he committed, where he would have committed them, And then they also had documentation that he was actually somewhere else when the
Right.
crime was committed, but yet he said he did commit these
Right.
crimes.
Right. And they weren't arguing it.
Well, they had
Texas
a map.
Rangers weren't
Texas
arguing.
Rangers, I mean, you would think that would be like investigation 101.
Number one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, you have motive, right? I mean, there's physical evidence, there's motive. None of those things were. I mean, I guess with a
Please.
serial killer, there is no motive. The people just kill them.
Right.
But then there's physical evidence. There was almost zero physical evidence in all
Yes.
of these cases.
Yes.
Just
Well-
about none.
Yeah.
The one thing that was so obvious was him driving all over the country, they said, but it was impossible for him to get to point A to point B to kill somebody, and the amount of time it took to
Right,
get
he'd
there
have
and
to
do
drive,
it,
like-
and
They
then
said he
point
couldn't stop to go to the
C,
bathroom, nothing.
Right, right.
you know, that it was just
Couldn't sleep.
and they were saying, yeah, that's what he liked to do.
Well, and the guys, Prince and Botwell, you know, and they would defend themselves by saying, "Well, we set up the task force. We're not gathering evidence
Yeah,
to build a
It's
case.
the
We're
other
just
authorities that are saying closing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. They're just they're
And
not,
they showed him all these pictures of the crimes, and it seemed like a way more details and information about the crime that those could lead enough for him creating a story based on what they showed him.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, they said these people probably, the authorities that came in to try to solve these cases in their own jurisdictions probably didn't really handle anything like this other than like parking tickets or not parking, well, something minor. So them coming in, like you said, to talk to him, they're showing him all the evidence they have. Well, anybody could create a story about murdering someone if you give them all the information to look at. They gave him the crime scene, they gave him the way the people looked, you know.
Where the body was found.
Yeah, it wasn't a stretch for him to say, oh yeah, I did it and this is how I did it, because they gave him all the information for the most part.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the point about him having such a low IQ and not being able to really be smart enough to remember these details. But then I think about, well, there is a condition where people are savants. And, you know, they can't tie their shoes and they can't dress
Right.
themselves, but they can do something.
they can do quantum physics.
Yeah.
They can do
Yeah.
something,
And it
you know,
could-
anything.
High-level
very,
math, yeah.
very special things that the
Yeah.
average
Right.
person can't
Yeah.
do.
But it could be his IQ was that because of the trauma to his head from being beaten.
It could be.
So that
Well,
could be why
it could
he
be.
was not.
But you know, then you know, I'm not a
Well,
doctor.
there's people like on this what
Another
they call
part
on
of
the
their brain
spectrum,
takes
right?
it. Right,
They're
right.
not, that maybe they, and that's the one I watched a document or thing about a psychologist that was breaking this down, and then where people are antisocial, but they're able to be very manipulative. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, right? They're able to manipulate people, but
Right.
they're also antisocial at the same time. It's almost like, seems like it's contradictory.
Right.
Which that's the thing about this is where, you know, I don't know if you've ever been on a jury, but and I have, and you see people
Thank
just
God.
flat out lie.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've been on I was on two juries where it's like these people are just flat out lying. You just know it. I mean, you just
And you think, but you can go to jail for lying, but yet they still lie.
Yeah.
yeah, we can
Does that
right.
occur to you? Like
they just
you're
flat
like,
out lie. But
Yeah.
then this guy, he's actually doing the opposite, where he's lying, but he's admitting to things. Most people lie to say they didn't do
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Nobody lies. So I guess you can give people the benefit of the doubt and realize how hard police work and even investigation work is, because people are lying. But then you got people lying to make things like that woman that was pretending she was Becky Powell, where they're lying for like what? There's no reason.
She loved
They're
him.
not lying to get out of something. They're lying to get into something.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah.
at that point he was
That's
going to get the death
really
penalty.
weird.
Right?
Yeah.
And she didn't want
Yeah.
him to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was claiming he wanted to die. Then he recanted that too. Remember?
Yeah. He
Because
did
he
say
found the Lord or
wanted
whatever.
to.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really great thing of this human psychological condition,
Yeah.
right? Where everything's gray. You want it to be black and white, but everything's mixed up in there. Like,
and anybody can make any truth.
Right.
That's what scared me watching this thing. Any truth can be made. Doesn't have to be the truth, but if enough people say it and enough people think it, it is the truth.